Hello YouTube, I'm Andrew Does Hair. You can find my work on Instagram at Andrew Does Hair. Today I want to kind of draw some parallels between something that we pretty much know very well from our everyday life, like doing the laundry, and something that seems to be overly complicated, like styling our hair. This is something that I kind of explain to every client in my chair, and I find that it's kind of a light bulb moment for most people where they go, oh my gosh, I never made that connection there. And so I'm hoping that by drawing some parallels here between a fabric like a t-shirt and your hair, it can help you to just understand what you're doing a little bit better. It might be the missing link between monkey see, monkey doing, a technique that you see online or see your hairdresser doing, not working for you and working for you. It's like you can copy the movements, but if you don't understand what's happening to the hair, you might not get the results. And so I'm hoping by talking about fabrics and clothings here a little bit, I can help you to kind of understand what's happening with the hair and what to look for to know whether you've done it right or not. So we all seem to know, again, just from everyday life, how a fabric works. There's certain things with a t-shirt that you know you can do and can't do if you want it to look right. You probably know that if I took a t-shirt and laid it flat out to dry, it would probably dry without any wrinkles. But if I took a t-shirt and I wrinkled it up and left it laying out to dry, it would probably dry with quite a bit of wrinkles. We kind of know this about our shirts. We kind of know this about our clothing. There's a strong, hard, subconscious almost list of, oh, you can't do that. You're going to mess up your shirt. You're going to look funny. You're going to have wrinkles. And I want to point out how you can use that understanding of how your clothing works to actually control your hair. So before I talk about what's the same between this material and this material, let me talk about what's different. When you get your shirt wet, it returns to a purely neutral state, meaning whatever it dries doing is going to be 100% dictated by how it's dried. It doesn't really have any underlying characteristics. However, with your hair, you might have weird growth patterns, you might have a wave that you don't like, to where when you get your hair wet, it doesn't go completely neutral. You get it wet, you still have those growth patterns, you still have those waves. So for the sake of comparison here, we're going to consider any unwanted wave or curl. Now, if you want wave or curl, don't consider it this. But any cowlicks or just any things we don't like the hair doing, we're going to consider those wrinkles. And the difference between a shirt and a head of hair is when you get the shirt wet, it goes back to neutral. When you get the hair wet, it goes back to these characteristics that you don't like and you want to control. So with the shirt, the only thing that could go wrong with it is what you do wrong with it. To where with your hair, if you do nothing, it goes wrong. It kind of defaults to having problems. If you were to check the Wikipedia entry for hairdryer, you would find a fact that a lot of people kind of don't seem to know. I'm recording on my phone now. I wish I had my phone here to read this. Your hair is kind of held together by different kinds of bonds. There are bonds that are permanent, for lack of a better term, to where even when you get your hair wet, those bonds remain holding your hair together. Your hair doesn't just dissolve when you get it wet. And those bonds might have some characteristics to it that cause the hair to bend in a certain way or curl or wave. But every time you get your hair wet, there are temporary bonds that are broken, hydrogen bonds, and then every time the hair dries, those bonds reform again. Now these hydrogen bonds, when they form, they are stronger than the permanent bonds. And so every time your hair sets, those temporarily broken bonds that break when your hair gets wet, when they rebond, they're stronger than what your hair permanently wants to do, stronger than the characteristics that come out while the hair is wet. So if you were to chemically straighten your hair or perm your hair, you're changing those permanent bonds that will remain changed even after the hair is wet. But it's like if you get a perm, you could still blow dry your hair straight because these temporary bonds that only last until the hair is wet again are stronger than the permanent bonds. This is very, very important to know because it seems like most people don't really understand that. Whatever your hair dries doing, it will want to do more than whatever it's doing just being wet, provided that you dry it properly to make it do that thing. Okay, so let's get back to the shirts. Let's say you take a vacation somewhere kind of exotic. You got a great deal on it. It's kind of the middle of nowhere. You had to like ride on a donkey to get to your destination. And when you get down there, the power's out. You got a dinner tonight and you need to get a shirt dried and not wrinkled. You take it out of your suitcase and you're like, oh crap, I got to fix this. You might imagine in that scenario that if you took the wet shirt and you laid it out perfectly flat or you hung it on a line, that it would dry and not hold any wrinkles. That's what I did with this shirt here. I laid it flat on a table and I just let it dry there. You can see for the most part, it's not really very wrinkled. We know that we would do that with a shirt. If we have no power and we just had to let it air dry, we know that the smoother we can lay it out, the smoother it's going to dry, and then the better it's going to look when we wear it. Now with our hair, this method is very comparable to what is a wet set or a wet style. And so that's basically when you take your damp hair, you put in some kind of hair gel or setting lotion, you comb it where you want it to go, you're laying it flat out on the head, and then it dries there and it sets there. And then those strong temporary bonds that last until the hair is wet again, they take over, and they're stronger than the product, they're stronger than your hair's natural tendencies. And so essentially you really only need your product to be strong enough to hold your hair in place until it sets. And once it sets, that's going to be stronger than anything else you can do to your hair. Maybe like some of that glue styling stuff or like heavy hairspray would be stronger. But point being, think about if you're going to wet style your hair, if you're going to just use product in damp hair and try to comb it where you want it and hope that it stays there, think about laying that shirt flat on a table or hanging it on a line to dry because you got no power. Whatever you can do to make the hair lay as perfectly as possible until it's completely dry is going to be the best thing for it. And it works identically to hanging a shirt on a line. If a shirt's hanging on a line or laying flat on a table and it dries that way, it's going to stay that way. And just like if your hair is laying flat or standing or whatever the product is holding it to do or whatever it wants to do on its own, whatever it's doing as it sits and air dries, it's going to stay wanting to do. So if you were to like hang dry your shirt and you put it on when it's not quite all the way dry and it finishes drying while you're wearing it, it might pick up some wrinkles. And the same thing goes for your hair. If you wet style it and it's not completely dry and it moves, it's not going to look nice anymore. You have to let it get completely dry to set all the way. Now let's say you've got a shirt that dried with some wrinkles in it and you want to wear it tonight. You want to just quickly and easily, without thinking about it, just have it ready to wear. You probably might take it and throw it in the dryer. You put your shirt in the dryer, it tumbles it around, it heats it, and then when it comes out of there, it's not wrinkled anymore. This, when it comes to hairstyling, is very similar to a flat wrap. So whether you're flat wrapping with a brush or by hand, the idea behind flat wrapping your hair is you're tumbling the hair around left and right and forward and back, and you're pushing it in all these different directions and heating it until all of the inconsistencies and wrinkles come out. Exactly like a dryer would do to a shirt. When you're tumble drying a shirt, it's working out those wrinkles. When you're flat wrapping hair, you're tumble drying it, working out the inconsistencies. And if you flat wrap hair long enough and with enough tension, eventually it just lays like glass with no cowlicks. It just will lay perfectly. So consider if you take that piping hot shirt fresh out of the dryer, and while it's still hot, you like throw it in the corner with wrinkles in it, and it cools off with those wrinkles. The dryer's not going to have done anything. It's going to cool with wrinkles and hold those wrinkles. So this is actually why your hair dryer has a cold button, because if you're flat wrapping the hair and you're getting it all hot, and then if it sits funny while it's cooling, it's going to stay sitting funny and the flat wrap will be for nothing. But if you use that cold button, you can set the hair right where you want it. So you get it good and hot until it's pliable and workable. You can see the cowlicks melting away. You can see all the inconsistencies and wrinkles, so to speak, working away. But it's still hot and you want to just set it in place. That's what your cold shot button is for. Is it sets the hair. Just like your shirt will stay doing whatever it was doing as it cools, your hair will stay doing whatever it's doing as it cools. It's exactly like a shirt. So if the flat wrap technique isn't quite working for you and you're wondering what's wrong with it, just think back to your shirt. Was it sitting in the dryer tumbling long enough? Did you take it out and let it cool in a funny way? Or did you make sure to cool it carefully and fold it while it's hot carefully? These same issues come up when you're flat wrapping the hair. People will hit me up and go, hey, it didn't work. It didn't, it got poofy, or it didn't straighten all the way. And I'm like, okay, well, you might have just not done it long enough. But also a good chance is you might not have enough heat or tension. So now let's imagine, forget the t-shirt examples. Let's say you're going to a wedding or something. You got to wear a button-down shirt. You're not going to take a shirt and throw it in the dryer and then pull it out and put it on with like a tuxedo or something. You cannot black tie out of a clothes dryer. You have to iron the shirt. Let's think about what an iron does to a shirt. A lot more heat than the clothes dryer, and a lot more tension than the dryer. So that added heat and tension will make your shirt really flat and smooth. It'll put creases in it. It'll make it look pristine. So if you're going for this really, really polished look with fabric, you know that more heat and more tension will make it smoother and straighter and cleaner. The exact same goes for your hair. If you want to flat wrap your hair like James Bond sleek, you need more tension. So you can get a brush that has tighter bristles and can pull the hair a little bit tighter, or you can get out the big guns and get a flat iron. So a flat iron is more heat and more tension than a hair dryer, and using it will give you a smoother result. Exactly like using an iron on a shirt will make it smoother and flatter than just hang drying it or throwing it in the dryer will. So it's pretty important to note that the flat iron can't control the roots of your hair, because you can't get it close enough to the scalp to bend the actual root of your hair. And also, if your hair is even a little bit wet when you use a flat iron, you risk breaking it, your hair that is. And so you never ever want to take a flat iron to even slightly damp hair. It has to be completely dry. And so for these two reasons, I do recommend flat wrapping before flat ironing, just to make sure the hair is completely dry and to make sure you got the roots under control. So while you're flat wrapping, focus on the roots, get everything standing or laying the way you want it, and then go back with the flat iron to deal with the rest of the hair. Now, I feel it's important for me to mention this because every time I talk about thermal styling, people come out of the woodwork to tell me that I'm wrong and my 16 years of blow drying hair in the salon means nothing and that people are gonna damage their hair because of my advice. Realistically, if you keep your hair on the shorter side, any hairs that are prone to damage, meaning the ends of your hair because they've been around the longest, they're gonna be trimmed off before you have a chance to damage them. It's very, very, very unlikely that you're gonna damage your hair if it's on the shorter side and you're thermal styling it. If you have much longer hair or you're trying to have much longer hair, maybe you wanna dial back the thermal styling a little bit, try to wet set it. If you're actually worried about hair dryer damage, you can get a heat protectant. They work, they really do. You can try to wet set your hair or find a style that can be wet set, and then just don't use thermal styling. And then above all, talk to your professional, the person who touches your hair and sees your hair and feels your hair and say, yo, do I look like I have any damage? Or do I look like I have hair that's prone to damage? You know, don't sit here and tell me that I'm telling people to damage their hair. Talk to your professional, you know, use whatever heat protectants make you feel comfortable, or avoid heat altogether if you're not comfortable with it. But I do have a video that I'll link in the description where I deliberately tried to burn hair off with a hairdryer, and it is a lot harder than you'd think. I mean, I was trying to burn this hair off and I couldn't do it. So I hope that this video kind of helped to shift your perspective on what you're doing as you're styling your hair. Anytime you get stuck, anytime your hair is not doing something you want it to do, think about your hair like a t-shirt. If you got a cowlick right here that you can't control and you've been trying everything, meaning, well, how would you fix a wrinkle in your shirt? Tension and heat, right? Or tumble it around in heat, or lay it flat while it dries until it sets. Wherever you are with your hairstyling, I don't think I can even think of an example with hair that doesn't have a t-shirt counterpart. I mean, the way that we treat our clothing is exactly the way that I treat styling hair. It's a fabric. I have so many fabric analogies for hair. Coarse hair is denim and fine hair is silk. But I hope that this sort of lecture here, analogy, metaphor situation was helpful in some kind of way for you. Thanks for watching.